Hello, what's happening? So, today I want to show you how to set up RedCorners Google Maps for Xamarin Forms and layers. So it's like a heavily modified version of Xamarin Forms Google Maps that supports layers. You can turn them on and off. And also how to find different types of places, for example, ATMs or mailboxes or toilets even when you move the map, and then show them as layers. So right now I have basically a blank project with some boilerplate code, and then we just need to install the NuGet. So it's this one, but before that let's update what we already have. Okay, now we're gonna install Google Maps, but it's RedCorners.Forms.GoogleMaps, not Xamarin.Forms.GoogleMaps. So it's a fork of Xamarin.Forms.GoogleMaps. All right. And let's also install Google Maps for iOS. It's this one, just for iOS. Now we need to initialize the maps. So we need to do it on main activity for Android. I'm gonna write Google Maps system.init and then this and saved instance state or bundle. And then for iOS, it's in app delegate. So you need to have a key for your Google Maps. For iOS, you pass it as a string, and for Android, you pass it in the manifest. Okay, so now we need to make collections, which are basically layers in RedCorners.Forms.GoogleMaps. So I'm gonna make a new folder. I'm gonna call it collections. And so we're gonna get our data from Overpass. It's an OpenStreetMap API that gives you places based on amenities. So for example, I can get cafes, I can get restaurants, libraries, and so on, fuel. So let's make a bunch of collections for each of them. So we use it as a base class. So it has to derive from async map object collection, which gives us query async. And here we do our query. So we need another NuGet, which is RedCorners.Places, RedCorners.Places, which has Overpass client in it. All right, now we have access to Overpass client or And we store a set of amenities that this class is going to query. And a radius for querying. So the API for Overpass client is very easy. You just do var nodes was await Overpass client dot search amenity nodes. So we pass amenities, and so async map object collection knows its center on the map. And we don't care about timeout. And if the call is successful, so it's not null, then we add the nodes to our map or layer or collection. So the result of this is an array of amenity node. So first we have to check if we already have this node in our collection, and if so, we should ignore it. So if we already have this object, then continue. Otherwise, we make a pin on a map. So we need a function called make pin for a node. Which would return new pin. So label would be, let's call it pin for now, or node dot amenity. And then we need an icon. So I already put some icons in this project. So I have an icon set. And for each amenity, we need an icon. So because it's going to be a base class, let's just do it like this. Let's define a function that takes an amenity node and returns a bitmap descriptor, which is an icon on Google Maps. And by default, it returns just a default marker. Not sure why my IntelliSense is not working. So now, icon is a make icon func of node. Okay. Oh, it's not void, it's in. So this is because we wanted to ignore it here if it already exists. And note that ID is the ID of node on Overpass or OpenStreetMap. All right, so the constructor. So here's our main view model. We just get rid of everything. Now, so we need an observable collection of map objects to assign to our maps item source. And then we make another one for Overpass that contains everything. And now our constructor would just add different collections for each amenity. So what do we want to show? Fuel, maybe? Or so I have a preset list of different collections here. All right. So title for fuel is fuel. The icon for it is EM22. And make on icon func would be give me a bitmap for em22.png. And I only need maximum 100 of it. So if there's more than 100, for example, if you're zooming out, it only returns 100. Let's show a bunch of other stuff. So ATM, for example. And then toilets, very important. Nice. Now let's do the view. So main page. We have to include maps. So we create a map with item source is finding map objects. And then now let's run it. So as you can see, now we have our amenities. So we have the gas stations, ATMs, and so on, and they stream as you move the map. So that's like a main feature of region collections. So when you move the map, it queries Overpass again. So the reason it's a bit slow here is because it's still querying the server and it's slowly loading, but it also caches the items. So if I go back, then we already have the items and we don't need to do API calls. So now let's write some UI to turn the layers on and off. So I'm gonna add to the sidebar a list that shows all of our layers and also with switches and icons to be able to toggle them. So let's turn this stack layout into a bindable layout with item source, overpass collections, and spacing 0. And then bindable layout that item template is a data template of a grid with a height request of around 50. So let's have an icon, a text, and a switch. So that's the icon, height request 20, width request 20. And then the label. And then finally a switch. And also because we have a map that we need to swipe on, we have to disable swiping on the sidebar. So as you can see now, I'm swiping on the map and sidebar doesn't open. We have all of the layers. they get streamed as we swipe. And also we have this sidebar with which we can instantly toggle the layers. So this is like one of the main features of collections on RedCorners.Forms Google Maps. You don't have to care about async stuff anymore and threads and anything. You just create an async map object collection, do your work here, and then use this objects set to just create and add your map objects. For example, you can add pins, circles, lines, anything. And then just feed this into Google Maps and it shows it. And also you can nest collections inside each other. So you can have a collection of collections. And all of them support streaming, and if something is outside the region that's being shown, it gets removed, and if you swipe back, it gets added automatically without you having to do anything. Cool.